Good morning, friends. Today we will be discussing a very important part of your UPSC preparation, which is how to write a good answer. How to write a good answer in maths. Now, a lot of people in this exam they have a very good knowledge. They have a very good reading style. They work hard, 18 hours, 16 hours a day. But when you see their marks in GS papers are very less. And there are, on the other hand, there are some people who with limited knowledge, limited readings, they score really well in their mains exam. So in this lecture we will be discussing what does a good answer contain and how should you structure your answer in your mains exam. So let me tell you about myself. I In 2017 paper I scored 132 in GS paper 1, 125 in GS paper 2, and 130 in GS paper 3. And to be really honest, I did not, according to my analysis, my performance in this year's paper was inferior to what I used to write a few years back. But I got more marks because after giving 5-6 years to this exam, somehow I have deciphered how you can increase your marks in your GS paper. Because in the first attempt, in my initial attempts, I was writing a very high-fi, what you call it, very intellectual stuff, but I was kind of getting average marks because I was not writing according to the there was no structure in the answer. Plus, I was not writing the answer according to the demand of the question. So these things I improved upon in last few years, and that is why I got very good marks in GS in last 2 years exam. So I will be, with my failures, with my experience, I will be sharing some key things which I did this year and the last year, which increased my GS score. And these things you can also repeat in your exam. So let's start with the first topic, which is what does a good answer contain? How could you call an answer a good answer? This is a very important question, and also there is no good answer to this question. But let me discuss some of the things which I consider as an important or integral part of a good answer or a different answer. See, the kind of paper UPSC has been asking in maths, almost 90% of the questions are basically general questions. Panchayati Raj, Mars mission, nanotechnology. They are very. Anybody who is preparing for UPSC would be aware about these topics. Simultaneous elections. But the problem is that everybody writes the answer, but some of the people get very good marks, some of them get 7 out of 10, and some of them get 4 out of 10. So how to get 7 out of 10, that is the main concern of this lecture. So first is diagram. In science and tech, IR, geography, international security, in all these things you can always draw a trigram. So you should remember the map of India, the map of the world. These things you can always try. In geography you have to remember the physical maps, the maps of these landforms, plate tectonic theory and everything. So these things you will have to draw in your paper. In geography, without diagram your answer will look incomplete. So a lot of people say that in geography, in physical geography, they are not asking anymore. They are asking 1-2 questions of physical geography. So how can we draw maps in that? So there was this one question asked last year which said that petroleum refineries are not necessarily located nearer to the crude oil producing areas, particularly in many of the developing countries. Explain its implications. So in this answer, there is no explicit thing that you have to draw the map, but you can always draw the map of India, and then you can explain which are the areas or which are the refineries which are there because of resource or because of raw material, which of them are there because of market. Like you have this Baroni oil refinery, you have this Mathura oil refinery. They are based on market because Delhi is there. Then there is a refinery in Visakhapatnam, which is based on port location. They can import it from the outside. So you can draw a map and then you can locate the refineries which are based on market, raw material, and import. So you can always draw a diagram. Similarly, in internal security, if there is any question with respect to terrorism or something, you can always draw a diagram. So diagram is will always fetch you more marks, definitely. Next we have is underline the keywords. This is always going to fetch you more marks because when you underline the keyword, because see, examiner is checking so many copies a day, and if your handwriting is bad, he or she may skip the important crux which you have written, or any important word you have written. So it is better that you underline the most important word in your line or most important words in your answer, because then he will definitely not miss that word or point, and you will definitely get more marks. But then there is also one thing, don't be extreme. There are some people I have seen or I've corrected the copies, they underline everything. When you underline everything, then it will not fetch you, because then the examiner will think he has underlined everything. So there now, I mean, he's not just highlighted the important part, इसने तो सब कुछ कर रखा है higher. तो उसमें in that kind of context, underlining will not help you. So you have to be very selective about underlining which word, which line to underline, so that only the important things are highlighted and not everything is highlighted. Next important thing is, always use real life examples. So, like, there was one question last year asked on SSG, the emergence of SSG in contemporary times points to the slow but steady withdrawal of the state from development activities. Examine the role of SSG in development activities and measures taken by Government of India to promote the SSG. So in this question, you can always mention the real life SSGs which you have been reading in the newspapers, which have done an exemplary job in empowerment of women. So you can mention the name of Kudum Shri, which is playing a phenomenal role in Kerala. You can mention other names also. So when you mention real life examples in your answer, it always gives weight to your answer. It always provides, much more weight to your answer, and definitely you can fetch 1 or 2 extra marks by writing real life examples. Next is current affairs. So even if the kind of the question which is asked is more of a background based, like there was this question called last year, it was asked that initially civil services in India were designed to achieve the goals of neutrality and effectiveness, which seems to be lacking in the present context. Do you agree with the view that drastic reforms are required in the civil services? So in this question, you can always add the current happenings, like you can add the lateral entry thing, right? So always try to connect the recent happenings in your answer, even when the kind of question which is asked is not explicitly from the current affair. Because when you add this current affairs thing, then examiner will think that you are able to correlate the static part with the current part, and plus you have been reading your newspapers very, very regularly. Next thing which your answer should have is side heading. So when we talk of side heading, it means, let me explain you with an example. So suppose there is a question asked, critically examine the recent proposal of government to introduce lateral entry. So in this, you can always, after the introduction part, you can start with side headings with the main that you can start with arguments in favor. In this, you can give side headings like it will increase competition. So you will give side heading and then you explain the point. Then you can the next point will be bringing new ideas. So this is a side heading, right? Side heading, and then you explain that point. Highlight that point, and then you explain that point. This will, make your answer look more attractive. Plus, it will make it easier for examiner to understand that you have covered all the dimensions very, very clearly. If you will write in paragraph thing and if you don't give side headings, then he will not be able to understand that whether you have written 5 new points or you have written 3 new points. So that will always have a positive impact on the examiner if you write side headings in your answer. Both in arguments in favor and arguments against also you can write some subheadings and then you can explain that. This is also one of the key components of a good answer. Next is preferably try to write in point format. With my experience, I can tell that when I was writing in the paragraph format, my marks were never very good because I don't know why. Because paragraph format probably the examiner, your answer does not look very attractive. In points format, it looks very simple for the examiner to check. So you have to write good answer, plus you have to ensure that you have minimum burden is on the examiner. तो आपका काम ये है कि examiner का काम आपको आसान करना है जब वो check करे, because उसको रोज बहुत सारी hundreds of copies he has to check every day. So your job should be to make his life easier by doing these tricks. और इसी ट्रिक का एक नेक्स्ट चीज जो काफी यूज करी थी मैंने इन GS पेपर 1 and 3, which was use of flow charts. Flow chart से क्या है कि it will help you in 2 ways. Firstly, it will differentiate your answer with rest of the answers because everyone is writing good things about that topic. When you do flow chart, examiner will say, okay, he has done some innovation. Secondly, it will also save your time. It will save your time and space. So you will be able to complete the kind of paper on time. So in the last questions, when you don't have time, you will always use the method of flow charts to explain the concepts, because explaining the concept will take 1-2 paragraphs. Drawing a flow chart will hardly take 1 minute or like 30 seconds to draw. So let's see how we can draw some of the diagrams in some of the questions. So suppose there is this question which says that critically evaluate the success of recent government initiative in strengthening and deepening the financial inclusion in India. So now you have to start the answer by defining what is financial inclusion. So one way is that you write a paragraph on what is financial inclusion and what is not. Second thing is that you can draw a flow chart to explain the concept of financial inclusion. So in this you can say that financial inclusion will contain 4 things. Now within 10 seconds, 15 seconds, I have drawn a diagram. So you can start your answer rather not by defining what is financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is that you can start your answer with this diagram, and then after that you can come to the point that what are the steps taken. If you don't have time, if you have less time, then even the steps taken by the government can also be explained through a flow chart. So you can write steps taken, then you can mention the steps. Jan Dhan Yojana, payment bank, small bank, all this will help you in 2 ways, right? It will make your answer look attractive and it will save your time. one more diagram which through which we can explain the concept, which can be used as an example. So there was a question asked last year in GS paper 3, which was something like this: among several factors for India's potential growth, saving rate is the most effective one. Do you agree? What are the other factors available? So in this, you can explain. One method is that you explain it by writing and paragraph and how saving rate is the most important factor for India's growth potential. Second way is that you can explain it through diagram. So you can say saving rate will lead to what? High saving rate will lead to what? It will lead to high investment rate, because high saving rate will, or you can explain it through this way: high saving rate will lead to low interest rate, and low interest rate will lead to high investment rate, and high investment rate will lead to higher production, and higher production would lead to higher economic growth. So you can explain the same thing, how saving is important for India's growth potential, with this diagram. And this will certainly fetch you more marks, because your answer will look different from the rest of the answer. Rest of the people would, write saving rate and importance of saving rate through points and everything. This will look more attractive, more more impactful also, because here you have clearly explained the concept, how it will lead to what, right? So this is how you can fetch, and I have used a lot in my papers last year. Next thing is draw tables. So one more innovative method is to draw tables. So suppose there is a question asked that there are a number of issues with the MSP, and do you think that price deficiency payment system will improve the, or will address the problem which we face with the MSP? So in this kind of question, what you can do is you can make a table, and you can start with issues with MSP. How will price deficiency payment address it? So after kind of defining what is MSP and PDP, you can draw this table. You can mention the issues. This issue is there, and how will price deficiency payment improve it? Then issue number 2 with kind of MSP, how will this address it? Right? Different kind of answer. When the examiner will see, he will kind of praise your efforts, that you have used some different innovation to explain the answer. And it will be more, if I am a copy checker, I will definitely love this style, because it makes my life simpler. I can clearly see these are the issues, how will this address it? Issue, address it. Issue, address it. Right? Next we have is cover more number of breadth, or you should cover as much dimensions as possible. See, a lot of aspirants do a mistake that they write very few points and they try to explain them in detail, right? This will definitely not fetch you more marks. I have done that, in the first attempt which I gave, I did the same mistake, that I was writing, because of time and because of space constraint, I was explaining the limited number of points which I wrote in detail, and I did not got good marks. So now what I've started to do is that I try to cover as many dimensions as possible, as many points, as many, legal and everything, as many aspects as possible, and I only explain them in 1 or 2 lines. So in this way, I can cover 6, 7 aspects or 7, 8 points very easily. And when an examiner sees my paper, or when the examiner will see the paper, he will get to know, okay, he has covered 7 points, he has covered 7 points in favor and 6 points in against. So definitely he will give you more marks. So there is no point in explaining 3 points and in very detail. It's better that you write 7 points and explain them only in a line or two. That will definitely fetch you more marks. And lastly, you should use pastel approach in your answer. Now, what is this pastel approach? This means political, economic, social, legal, environmental, this is technological, and last is legal. For the UPSC, you can always use more aspects also. These are the main aspects. So if there is a question asked, so suppose there is a question about discuss the advantages of the river linking and its possible impact on the environment. This was the UPSC question asked last year in GS paper 3. So when you talk of possible impact on environment, you can always, talk about political effects. It will lead to more fight among the states, and then there's international dimension. Our neighboring countries will not be very happy with that. You can write economical implication. It's very costly. Social implication. A lot of people will become homeless. Rehabilitating them would be a great cost. Environmental impact, it will affect the flora and fauna and everything, and also we are playing with nature, all these things. Technological challenge or something. So you can always write these kinds, so you can use that in IR questions very frequently. So when there is a question asked with importance of any kind of country with India, you can always take economic, geopolitical, military, strategic, cultural. You can always cover all these dimensions very, very easily. And this can be done in everything. I mean, in a lot of questions in GS paper 2 and 3 and 1. Like there was this question asked on how does coal mining affect. In this also you can divide it into social and everything. So always try, wherever it is possible, try to use this pastel approach in your answer. So this is what a good answer should contain. Now we will deal with next part, which is structure of a good answer. So when we talk of structure of a good answer, it would mean that how should be the introduction be, how should the main body be, how should the conclusion be. A lot of people, a lot of answers which I check, they have this problem that they're writing philosophical things in the introduction, they are writing a 1-page introduction, and then you have less space for writing the main body. So introduction should be crisp, 1 paragraph maximum. And there are 3 ways you can start your introduction. So first way is that you can write the context. So suppose there is a lateral entry question asked, you can write the context that recently government has started, or it has introduced the lateral entry thing for the post of joint secretary. You can write that, right? Or if there's a question on governor, that should governor post be scrapped, you can write the context that in recent times there have been number of incidences where the governor has not played a partial or impartial or something like that, right? So you can always start with the context. This is one way you can start your introduction. Second way you can start your introduction would be definition based. So let's write here. Next is definition based. So suppose there is a question asked on do you think competitive federalism is working in India? Discuss. So in this you can start with defining what is competitive federalism in the introduction part. And after defining, you can come to the main body and explain that do you think it's working or not working and solution and everything. You can start with defining the concept itself. So if the question is asked on price deficiency payment, which I have mentioned earlier, you can start with mentioning what is price deficiency payment system. So this you can start in your introduction part. Third way to write an introduction is historical background, or what you call as background based. So if there is a question on All India Judicial Services, you can start by mentioning the background that it was first recommended by Law Commission in 1950s, and then after that a number of commissions have recommended this, so you can start with giving the background or the history of the topic. Next we come to is the main body part. So when you talk of main body part, you can see every answer should be balanced. It should be balanced. You have to write both sides of the argument. There is never no policy, no scheme, no proposal is one-sided. There are always some flaws, or there are always some positives in any policy, any topic, anything. Be it lateral entry, be it NGAC, be it All India Judicial Services, be it governor, be it any issue, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, critically analyze, or Swachh Bharat Mission. Any scheme, any policy, any topic, anything will have two sides of the argument. So you have to mention both sides of the argument in your answer. Main body, you don't have to take a stand. You have to mention the facts, that this is why this is beneficial, this is the issues or the challenges. You can take your stand in the conclusion part. That is your place to take your stand. But in the main body part, you will have to be very, very neutral. You will have to present the both sides of the picture. So suppose there is a question on lateral entry, like we have discussed. So you have to take both sides, that why lateral entries, or the arguments in favor, arguments against, and then in the conclusion part you can mention your own stand. Last and very important thing is conclusion. I believe this is the most important part of your answer, because generally the examiners they give more focus to the conclusion part. What is your stand? How did you concluded your answer? Because generally in main body part the points are almost similar, by all of us know about the topic. So the points are more or less similar. It is how you end the answer that increases your chances of scoring good marks. So first of all, you have to give solutions in almost all the answers. even when it is not explicitly asked in the question that you have to give solutions, still you have to give some solution. You should not just be a problem finding thing, because giving solutions means that you are thinking. Because in the first two part, you are just mentioning the points which you have read in the newspapers, but in the conclusion part, that is your own backyard. You can give some innovative solutions, and that will always have a very very good impact on the examiner. So always give solutions even when it is not explicitly asked. Second and most important thing is that you need to be optimistic. You need to be optimistic, you need to be positive. So even when a question is asked, when the kind of the tone of the question is very pessimist, that should the position of the governors have always played a bad role in India's politics. So in the context of this, should the post of governor be scrapped? So in this also, you will have to take a very optimistic conclusion about the post of governor, because generally scrapping anything is a little extreme. So a good conclusion could be something like this: that misuse of position of power should not serve as a justification for removing the office altogether. Yes, there are some problems, but here are some of the suggestions which can make the post of governor again. So you can have a balanced approach, criticize it that yes, he is not functioning well, but then that is not the solution, because misuse can be done of any post. So you should focus on problem solving approach, that yes, there is problem, but it can be rectified by following or by implementing these number of measures. Similarly, in lateral entry thing, you can conclude with saying that while lateral entry is a need of the hour to bring expertise into higher echelons of power, however, certain safeguards are required to ensure that this novel idea is not misused. And these safeguards include, and you can mention the number of safeguards, that we should have autonomous commission, we should take interview of these people, and number of other steps you can take. So conclusion should always be forward looking, it should always be balanced, and it should be it should give some solutions, it should be problem solving, and it should neither be in two sides of the extreme. So neither they are looking for a guy who can all, because a bureaucrat is expected to give honest opinion to the political master. He is expected to do that. That is his job, because political master does not have the expertise. He has the expertise. Since he has the expertise, he should give him honest opinion, which means even criticizing the policy. That, sir, there are a number of problems in these policies, and I think my suggestion is that you should implement this, right? He should do that. So that should also reflect in your conclusion, that you are criticizing also that there are a number of flaws in this policy or scheme, but you're also giving some solution. So your conclusion should not sound like an activist which always criticize everything. It should also not look like a person that it should not look like a bhakt that Swachh Bharat scheme has revolutionized everything. It has been the greatest thing since independence and everything. No, it should not also look like that. So it should be in between an activist and a bhakt. This is a very very, so what you call as a middle ground. This is your conclusion should reflect, but it should always be optimistic. It should always reflect that things can be changed, things can be improved if some course correction is done. So this is the first part of the answer. And one thing more I want to share with you: see, these examine, discuss, comment, evaluate, critically evaluate. A lot of people have made videos on that, and you can watch those videos to understand what does it mean. I mean, this is I don't have to waste my time in that, because there is already a lot of good people who have said how to approach things like analysis, evaluate, examine. So you can always, if you want, I can even share the link with you of people who have made good videos on that. One thing I want to discuss is that when somebody says critically examine or analyze or discuss or comment, you should try to focus more on the critical angles or the issues with the kind of scheme or a policy or anything. You should focus more on the critique part, but you should always provide a good solution. Critiquing anything will not be justified if you don't provide solutions. You have to provide solutions. You can focus some things on critique. So what I do when there's a term used, critically analyze, or when the term critically is used, what I do is that I do an introduction about the topic, then I focus on some of the positive aspects of that scheme or policy or anything, and this is done briefly. Then after that I focus mostly on criticizing or what are the issues which are there with the scheme or the policy, and then I finally end the answer with providing some solutions or conclusion. How could I improve the things? How could we improve this scheme or policy or anything? This is what I do when I write the answer. So this ends the first part of our of lecture, which is how to write a good answer in mains. In the next part, we will be discussing the first mains GS paper, which was held last week. So we will be discussing how to approach the questions in that paper.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civil State.